If you grew up around religion, especially one that looks to the Bible for moral guidance, you probably heard the idea that men and women are equal in the eyes of God. That God created both, values both, and sees no difference in worth. That's what's often said out loud. But if you take the time to really read the Bible, not the cherry-picked verses or sanitized Sunday school versions, but the whole thing, something else starts to become very clear. The way women are treated isn't just outdated. It's deeply woven into the logic of the text itself. And once you notice it, it's hard to unsee. The Bible doesn't just reflect the sexism of ancient times, it amplifies it, justifies it, and encodes it into divine law. It doesn't merely contain a few problematic verses here and there. It builds a worldview where women are consistently portrayed as inferior, dangerous, or subordinate, and then calls that arrangement holy. Start at the very beginning, Genesis. The first woman, Eve, is literally made from Adam's rib, not from the earth like Adam, not alongside him, but after him, and from him. That's not a creation story about equality. That's a setup for hierarchy. And what's her first big moment in the story? Being tempted, giving in, and causing the fall of humanity. All of human suffering, pain, toil, death, is placed on the shoulders of the first woman. And this isn't treated like myth or poetry. It's moral foundation. And from that moment on, the punishment is clear. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. That's not metaphor, that's doctrine. Now, some people argue that the New Testament softens all this, that Jesus came and changed the way women were seen. But let's look closer. Jesus does show more compassion toward women than the cultural norms of his time, but compassion isn't the same thing as equality. He still chooses 12 male apostles. He still frames moral authority in masculine terms, and he still speaks of God as a father, never as a mother. Meanwhile, Paul, whose letters make up a huge part of the New Testament, is far less subtle. He says directly that women should remain silent in churches, not that they may remain silent, that they must. He says they are not permitted to teach or have authority over men. And then he circles right back to Genesis. For Adam was formed first, then Eve. And Adam was not deceived, but the woman was deceived and became a transgressor. That's not a historical observation. That's the foundation for a theological worldview, one where women are inherently less fit for leadership because of something supposedly built into their nature. And that's not just ancient writing. That logic still echoes in countless churches today, where women can sing in the choir, raise funds, teach Sunday school, but never preach from the pulpit, where they can be praised for modesty but never for power, where their main value is often tied to purity, motherhood, and submission. Look at the laws in the Old Testament. A woman who isn't a virgin on her wedding night is to be stoned to death. A raped woman is forced to marry her rapist, provided he pays her father a fee. These aren't obscure metaphorical verses. These are written as laws from God. And sure, defenders will say, but those were different times. The culture was different. That might be a fair point. If the Bible were presented as a human document reflecting the ideas of its time, but it's not. It's presented as divinely inspired, morally timeless, and relevant forever. If the laws were really from a just and all-knowing God, why do they mirror the patriarchal norms of the Iron Age so perfectly? And here's something else to think about. In a lot of Christian denominations, especially conservative ones, the idea of female submission isn't treated as a historical footnote. It's a cornerstone of family structure. Women are taught to submit to their husbands in everything. Husbands, in turn, are told to love their wives, but the relationship is never equal. It's framed as a chain of command. The man answers to God, the woman answers to the man. Even when framed as loving, that's still a hierarchy. And this plays out in real lives, in how some girls are taught to be obedient before they're taught to think critically, in how many women internalize guilt for being ambitious or outspoken, in how often abuse is overlooked because questioning male authority is treated as a spiritual failure. These teachings aren't just old words in old books. They become blueprints for behavior, expectations, and power dynamics. They shape marriages, silence voices, and normalize inequality. Now, you might hear people say, but the Bible also has strong women. And it does. Deborah, who led Israel. Ruth, who was faithful. Esther, who saved her people. But notice the framing. Their strength is the exception, not the rule. Their stories are isolated, not systemic. And more often than not, their value is still tied to how they support men, not how they stand on their own. Even Mary, the most celebrated woman in the Bible, is revered for her purity, her obedience, her role as a vessel, not for her choices, her leadership, or her mind. And think about how often women in the Bible are unnamed, referred to simply as a wife, a harlot, a daughter. Their identities are secondary to their relationship with a man. Compare that to how male figures are introduced, with lineage, title, role, and significance. That's not a divine accident. That's a literary pattern reflecting a worldview. And here's where the real tension lies. If someone believes the Bible is a human document, flawed, historical, a reflection of its time, then all this makes sense. Ancient societies were patriarchal, women were property, power belonged to men. Of course, the stories reflect that. But if someone believes the Bible is the word of a perfect, moral God, then what's the excuse? Why would divine wisdom mirror ancient misogyny? Why would eternal truth be built on the belief that women are secondary, sinful, or subservient? And why would faith communities still defend that framework today? It's one thing to respect old texts as literature, but it's another thing entirely to treat them as moral guides, when they so clearly treat half the population as less. And this isn't just about religion's past, it's about its influence right now. In politics, in education, in reproductive rights, biblical ideas about gender are still used to justify laws and policies that control women's bodies, limit their autonomy, and reduce their choices. Think about how often debates around abortion, contraception, or even equal pay get wrapped in traditional values language. Values that can often be traced straight back to Scripture. And when people push back, they're told they're attacking faith, as if questioning inequality is somehow an assault on the sacred. But the truth is, when we stop questioning these narratives, we allow them to shape us. Quietly, gradually, and deeply. We teach girls that submission is virtuous. We teach boys that leadership is their birthright. We teach everyone that this was ordained, not constructed. But what if it was constructed? What if these gender roles aren't holy truths, but human inventions reinforced by old books, repeated through ritual, and wrapped in the language of reverence? What if the real moral task isn't to defend the Bible's view of women, but to outgrow it? Because no matter how poetic the verses, no matter how cherished the tradition, when a text teaches that one gender is above another, it should be examined, not excused. And if morality means anything at all, it has to include equality, not just in theory, but in the stories we tell, the roles we honor, and the beliefs we're willing to challenge.